Good morning, Service Alliance community. Hope everybody's doing great. How are you, Shayna?
I'm doing fabulous. I think the sun is starting to come out. This time
What's
change is
that?
kicking my butt, but
I was in Miami last week, so I went down there and then came back for literally like one night and didn't have to adjust to the time change. So I thought it was great.
well,
So
I
I
was
got
in
off
Florida,
easy that way.
but I stayed in Central time zone, so I still had to adjust to it. And
Uh,
it's kicking my butt. It's just kicking it this week. I don't It doesn't normally do that, but for some reason this week,
this week. Fun
like I
week.
want to go to bed early and sleep in late. I don't know why.
You're just getting old.
Ah!
That's just age. All right. Good morning, Jason.
Good
Got
morning, Gary.
Gary and Adam
Hello.
and whoever else hasn't chimed in. Hello. Good morning. Thanks for joining us.
Good
All right.
morning.
Today we are talking about pricing for predictable growth. So this ought to be fun.
It's gonna be so
Predictable
much
growth
fun.
is good. Yeah.
It is. It is.
All right. So before we get into it, if it's your first time joining us, welcome. And we open everything up with prayer and a Bible verse that accompanies our topic. And then we get into the topic. So, Shayna, would you like to open us up in prayer?
Jesus.
All
Yes.
right.
Heavenly Father, once again, we come to you and we thank you for the day. We thank you for your glorious your glory just surrounding us, Father God. This is a great day, and it's a great day to be alive. It's a great day to be here walking this earth with breath in our lungs, Father God. And we give you the praise and the glory for that. Father, I pray that as we go through this podcast, that you give Mike and I the words that you need us to say, Father God, that we will be a light for you and glory for you, Father God. And then as we all go about the rest of our day, Father, that you just shine down your glory on us. Let people see your love through us and help us be that shining light for others. I give you the praise and the glory for all these things in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Thank you for that. All right. Today's Luke, verse is Luke 14:28 through 30. Suppose one of you wants to build a tower. Won't you first sit down and estimate the cost to see if you have enough money to complete it? For if you lay the foundation and are not able to finish it, everyone who sees it will ridicule you, saying, "This person began to build and wasn't able to finish." This verse directly addresses the importance of understanding costs before undertaking a project, and that includes running a business. You need to
Mm.
understand your cost. So, let's see. So, structuring your pricing for predictable growth. All right. So, today we're going to focus on predictable growth because I believe that that's truly how a business succeeds, knowing how to predict growth. You can't plan, you can't, run a business day by day, checking your bank account every other day, thinking, oh, I've got money in there today. I wonder if I'll have money in there tomorrow. That's how businesses fail every single day in this country. So we want to know predictable growth and set you up for success. So let's talk about knowing your true costs. And before we talk about pricing models, you need to understand what your true costs are. Because so many business owners out there are actually missing 20 to 30% of their actual costs. You think you know what your actual costs are, but you're not calculating in a lot of forgettables. Um, some things to consider, like what's the difference between perceived cost and your true cost in appliance repair? How to calculate your fully loaded labor rate, including benefits, training, and downtime. Have you ever even thought of including those things in your actual rates? You're including your vehicle cost, beyond just fuel, making sure that your maintenance, insurance, and depreciation is actually included in those. These are forgettables that people don't even consider. More forgettables could be software, advertising,
Mhm.
insurance, office expenses. All these little things add up, right? But they're
Yeah.
all a cost of doing business and the value of the owner's time. Now, this is where everybody thinks that they're either invaluable or priceless. But there is value as a person. Okay, you're a business owner, you've got a value, and your time and your energy and your cost need to be calculated in just like any other employee. Okay, it's usually your time is usually the most undervalued. Let's face it. Especially in our own mind, we all think that we're king. We all think that we're the smartest. We all think that we're the most valued. But in reality, you're another body. You're another resource. You're just the visionary of it all, right?
Yep.
So over to you.
Okay. Well, first off, I want to say good morning to Saul, our
Oh,
faithful follower
so
right there. He's fat and he's ready to party. I'm ready to party with you next week, Saul. So I'm super excited to actually meet you in person. So, anyways, okay. So breaking down some real life examples, it is easy for us to say, I pay a technician $30. So if I charge $60, should be enough, right? Right? I mean, we've done that. Jason and I did that back in the day. My dad did that. We paid technicians in the early 90s anywhere 10 to $15 on average, and my dad charged $25 an hour. It's not bad, right? Now, there was a lot less overhead. We didn't have an office building. We didn't have software. My dad used a computer and he used Excel spreadsheet. But we still had fuel. We still had vehicles. We still had parts. We still had you know, all those little things. And yeah, my dad charged for on top of labor, he charged for parts. But he didn't charge for the screws. He didn't charge for all those little the nuts to go on the wires. Like there's all that stuff. Besides the fact that we should be continually looking to up our service. So when Jason and I came in, we got uniforms. Do you have floor savers to put down on the floors or the counters to keep from the floors or the counters getting scratched? Do you have the dolly, the all dolly? Do you have that? Like all of that is added expense that we don't even think about. So our true cost and expense for having a $30 an hour technician is not $60, and your costs are going to be different than my costs. So this week we got some action steps. So every topic that we're going to discuss here, we're going to go over key points, but then we're also going to go over action points. And if you are listening to this, you say, "Hey, I need those action points written down, sent to me." Just reach out. It's here. So I have 4 different action steps this week to challenge you to go figure out this. So first off, track every minute of yours and your team's time for at least 3 days, right? So get out those little 15-minute sheets and have them fill it out. Like I did it with my time sheets. Every time they stepped in the warehouse, they had to clock out of what they were doing and clock in what they were doing. They step in the car and they take off. They clocked out of the warehouse. They clocked into driving. They stopped at the customer's house. They clocked out of driving. They clocked in. And I did that. We tracked all their time because a lot of times we forget, hey, I have warehouse time. Hey, we have office time. Hey, they went to the gas station and not just got gas, but we had to go in and get coffee, right? And all of that cost us. It's not just the time that they're in that customer's house. So track your team's time, track your time. Um, So then next, create a comprehensive list of all the expenses from at least 3 months. So if you have QuickBooks and you're doing QuickBooks correctly, you can actually pull those numbers, right? Or you have a bookkeeper doing it for you. You should be able to pull those numbers. Um, don't just rely on your bookkeeper though. Go through your individual items and make sure things are in the right spot. Um, Not every bookkeeper is in the area that you're in, and sometimes they may Google and think that something goes where it goes, but then it doesn't. For instance, a good example is food costs. Um, and this is like food's going to cost food, right? But not on your taxes. So making sure that your travel food is in one category and your regular food in your area is in another category. But look through your expenses. Are they in the right category? Where are you spending your money? And then to calculate your true hourly cost, use a worksheet. And and I think, Mike, we're going to be providing some sort of worksheet at the end. I'm not sure exactly what is included in that. Um, that's what the note says. He looks a little.
Yeah, we can add something.
We can add something, reach out to one of us. Like we get it, reach out to any one of the alliance, the Zach or TK or Mike or myself. We can definitely help you out with that. So calculate your true hourly cost for each technician. What are they costing you? And every technician is going to cost you different because you might have one technician that works 8 hours, only goes to 5 jobs, and you have another one that does 10 jobs in 8 hours. Like every technician is going to be different. Um, and then once you do that, then you can determine your overall allocation that you need to charge per service call. So there's your action steps for knowing your true costs.
But it goes beyond determining determining your overhead, per service call. I don't think it ends there.
Oh, it
Um,
doesn't.
if you're wanting to grow at all or grow your business in any way, you need to build that growth into your pricing model. And that has to be strategic. So now that you understand what your true costs are from going through Shannon's examples, let's talk about the pricing models that support predictable growth. Um, take Make sure you compare your time versus materials versus flat rate pricing. Okay. There's there's pros and cons to each of these, and I, I'm a little indifferent on this. I think flat rate pricing is much more stable, predictable if it's evaluated properly. Pricing changes on parts all the time. They're a commodity, they're going to go up and down. As far as labor, that only changes as you start adding bodies. The more bodies you add to your business, the more your labor rate's going to go up. Because you're going to have a lot of additional expenses. You have no choice but to raise your labor rates as you scale, um, to the point that the market can bear. Time and materials, obviously, the good for that is you can get paid on the time that you spend and exactly for the materials that you're using, regardless whether you're flat rate pricing or not. Your materials and parts should all be separately allocated anyway. So your flat rate pricing should be your labor rate. But if you're gonna bill per time, then you've absolutely got no I guess incentive to get it done quicker. All right. So
Mhm.
that's why I'm not a fan of time-based um pay. Tiered service packages will help you create predictable revenue streams. If you can have some service packages that you can sell and have those as monthly recurring revenue or yearly recurring revenue, you're going to be way better off. Um, it's an easier way to create that predictable growth. the concept of growth margins. Let's talk about this for a second. If you intentionally build the expansion capital that you need to grow into your pricing, you know it's going to be there. All right. And then monitor it and make sure you set that aside. If you know that you need to hire another technician, build that into the pricing now. And once you have that money saved and you know that you can afford it and you know that your market can sustain that pricing model for you to hire another technician, that's when you hire that next technician. So you need to always be planning your next step out and build it into your pricing now. Why do you think consistent pricing creates operational efficiency? Because you can see what you can afford and what you can't. It it's a way to test your market. It's a way to test where your service area is and what it's going to bear and what it's not going to bear. Most people think, oh, the people in my service area, they will never pay these rates. And 99.9% of the time, I have found those claims to be false every single time. People are going to pay what it takes from a company that they trust. They will pay extra from a company that they trust. Um, you may have competition in your market that is much cheaper than you, but they're bottom of the barrel feeders, right? You're always going to have those. Never ever set your pricing based on what other companies are charging because
Okay.
it's a race to the bottom and you don't want to win that race. That's that's just a way to run yourself out of business. Let other people do that and then you won't have any competition left. Um, Go ahead, Shayna.
Well, let me, can you pop up Andrew's question on there? First off, good morning, Andrew. He put on here, calculate costs off past expenses or projected, and how can we actually forecast with the way the world is? That's a really good question because really, in all reality, looking at only 3 months is not going to really truly justify your big picture. Which is why I said if you can get like a full year, because let's just say, for example, you pay for your software in advance for that discount, right? That software is only going to be on 1 month. So if I paid for that software in June, and I'm only doing the last 3 months, I'm not going to see that software on there, and I'm not going to be calculating that into my expense. Now, most expenses are over the board and straight. My suggestion is if you're not doing anything at all and you don't know how to do projected, at minimum, look at your past. QuickBooks does have a great feature that most people don't know about, but if you go into your profit and loss, there is a drop down that you can select this as percentage of income, and it will actually show you your actual percentage, which I actually like way better because it will tell you, and if you look at it by month, it will tell you where your actual percentage of trends are based off of your revenue. And so, for instance, your workman's comp may be the same across the board. So, 1 month may be 8% of your income, and the next month is 2% of your income. But it does give you a general idea. So, if you are looking at projected, that percentage of income is where it's going to help you with the projected. We're always going to have rising costs. We're always going to have things like that. So always, that's why you always have a markup on top. Don't just like look at the flat number and say, okay, now I can break even. We're not trying to break even. Like, let's not break even. Let's add on and let's get us there. So I hope that answers your question. Um, so back to building growth on your pricing model. So Mike, you were talking about time and material. And so when we went from time and material, when we were time and material, I remember, and I came in the office when our oldest was born, and that's when I started helping my dad with his Excel spreadsheets. And then I got QuickBooks, and we were still doing time and material at near the beginning, but rolling into a flat rate. And I remember having so many people call and complain because we sent them a bill for $25 an hour, and my dad spent half that time running to the parts store to get parts. Well, we had to bill somebody for that, right? He got to the job, he needed an outlet cover, he didn't have an outlet cover. Who's paying for that? Um, And so there are tons of people that sit there and they do watch their clock. They, from the minute you pull up, like they're counting that, they've got that timer going, and they do not want to be billed for a second over a second over the time from the technicians in your house. The other aspect of that, you do have technicians that will milk the clock, right? But you also have slow technicians. So you look at my dad versus Jason. They both installed amazing breaker boxes. Like, it was so pretty. Now Jason's, of course, was way prettier, but he made it as shiny as his head is. But they both did amazing work. But my dad could install a breaker box in about, I'm going to say, let's just say average of 5 hours, right? Jason's was 3 hours. So is it fair to the homeowner that I sent out a 5-hour technician and charged them for 5 hours versus a fast technician and only charge them for three? So that flat rate takes away all that. It takes away all the guessing game. Customer knows upfront what it's going to be, and you are taking into account your slow technician and your fast technician into your pricing model. Um, so the question to ask is, does your current pricing structure fund any of your future plans? Do you need to buy a vehicle next year or this year? We're still in March. Do you need to buy a vehicle this year? Is your vehicle starting to age out? Like, are you going to have to get a loan? Can you buy a $5,000 vehicle, or do you need to buy a $20,000, $30,000 vehicle? Do you need to equip the vehicle with shelving and how are your tools? You're going to need to buy new tools. Like, what are your future plans?
Or just some unknown expenses that might come
Yeah,
up, like
yeah.
vehicle repairs.
Transmissions going out. That let's talk about that one, right? Is that in it? Like, no, I don't want to plan for that, right? But we have to plan for it. We just have to. Um, so does your current pricing structure, does it does it fund that? Whether you want to plan for that in the future or not. Most don't. So, some actionable steps. I want you to analyze your last 5 service calls, not 5, 50 service calls, last 50 service calls. And when you analyze it, you're going to look at the time that was put in and the material that was put in. Um, and was it profitable? Now, for me, I count driving time. So, driving time from my office to the first call, driving time when when our technician left the that call and went to the next call, that drive time went to the next customer. Um, was it profitable in that aspect? But then also the next step would be establish your minimum margins for each service type. So refrigerator repairs should have this percentage of margin. What is that going to be? And yours is going to look different than I'd say mine. If I had an appliance company, it would look different. Um, my electrical looked different than the electrical company down the road. Number three, create a separate growth fund from a percentage of each job. So um, for those expansions or repairs that need to be made, set aside money for that because you have to have that. Um, and then building price structures such as good, better, best. That is very common. Now, some repairs you can't, but on the other hand, your good, better, best, your best could be included. For instance, if you're working on a dryer, actually going through and 100% cleaning the dryer. Do you want the Band-Aid fixed? Do you want me to just, not really Band-Aid, but do you want me just to fix the repair? Or do you want me to make it where your dryer is going to last another 5 or 10 years on top of where we're heading right now? Like, what would you like for me to do? So there are good, better, best options that you can create if you put your mind to it and you get those out there. So
They're great for
there's your 4
upselling.
action steps. Yes.
All right. Now here's where you communicate that value to support your pricing. The best pricing structures fail if customers don't understand your value. So let's talk about justifying higher prices that will help fund your growth. This is where these upsells are going to come in. This is where you need to focus on this, and where you're if you're a multi-tech operation, you need to really train your team on the vision of this. Okay. Um, the difference between selling on price versus selling on value. People will pay different prices for the same identical thing. It's all in the way it's presented in the value that they perceive, right?
Mhm.
Perceived value or perceived indifference. People will not buy because of perceived indifference. People will buy when it's perceived value. Okay. So when you sell on price, you're eliminating completely the value aspect. The price is not what matters. You need to tell them what you have, all the value of it, and how it affects their family.
Mhm.
That's where their value is. If they value their family, you need to lean towards all the benefits of their family is going to get out of you repairing this the proper way and the longevity that it's going to give their machine. Okay.
Mhm.
No matter what machine you're working on. It'll save them money in the long run from having to deal with, having another machine delivered or replacing it, going out shopping, all of those things. So, how do you articulate those differentiators? Talk about response time, talk about your warranty, and talk about your expertise. That perceives value. When you talk about all of those things, your general image, telling somebody, hey, we've been in this community for 20 years or 15 years, whatever it may be. We have a reputation to uphold, and we are not going to do any shortcuts that are going to negatively affect our reputation. And if that's what you want, then we're not the service provider for you. Okay. That immediately lets them know that you're unwilling to bend um based on price,
Yeah.
because you value your reputation and your quality more. 99% of those people are going to go with you, once you lay it out that way. Because then they're going to understand why you have the prices that you do. It's much easier for them to accept at that point. Um, Now training your technicians to communicate this is much harder.
Yes.
So many technicians want to apologize for the price being high. And that is one of the worst things that you could ever do. Is a technician should never apologize for the price, because that means they don't have faith in your pricing structure or their own value as the technician working for your company. So rather than apologize, they need to communicate the value that they are offering. Okay. Everybody has to be on the same page. If your technicians are not on the same page as you, then you've got work to do. Um, Create pricing transparency that builds trust. Once you train your team to communicate the value of your pricing and it's transparent and it builds trust, those team members are going to be able to sell more. They're going to have a higher ticket value, and you're going to have happier customers that trust you more. Okay. That you're not just there to fix a problem and then leave. Every customer is not a one hit wonder. All right. You need to create that long term customer value that's going to keep them coming back and keep them trusting you and keep them referring you for the long term. So, Shayna, what happens when we compete on price alone? What do you think happens there?
Yeah, well, when we compete on price alone, we are going to end up either closing our doors or digging a ditch so deep that it's going to be very hard for us to get out of. So, we definitely, you don't want to be in competition with your price. First off, like, you want to be in competition with yourself. what can you do to better your business? Um, so so don't be competing on price. Um, I was looking at Saul's. I've not seen this one before, so I'm writing it down so that I can try it and see what it looks like. He put on there, you can use formula new price minus old price divided by old price and then multiply by 100. So I've never done that before. I've wrote it down because I'm going to play with it later to see what it looks like. And then Andrew asked the question, quantity dependent I can't even say that word. Industry
Volatile.
volatile industry that changes with culture, economy, large vendor pricing, and lead competition. Where can I find the most stability in the appliance industry? I do not have an answer for that.
All right. I kind of do. All right.
Okay.
When it comes to vendor pricing, shop your vendors. They compete on pricing all the time. Not everybody's going to have perfect pricing. Sometimes their pricing makes mistakes. So take parts out of the equation. You cannot control part prices. Only the vendors can help work that out with manufacturers. Okay. So you have zero control on parts pricing. You have more control on your margins with those parts. Okay. And that's profit, period. So you need to take that out because you can't change your margins. You can't change your pricing on your parts. Okay. So you can't you can't look at that and say I have the a way to make things stable when that comes into play. So with that removed, now you look at everything else, and that's what you need to base your stability on. um Now he's saying not parts vendors but new sales vendors. I guess I'm not understanding new sales vendors having to compete against MSRP of the new market. Well, I mean that when you're dealing with MSRP, um, that's always a guideline, right? So depending on aftermarket parts, obviously they're way cheaper than OEM. Some people love to just throw OEM parts at things, but I'm I used to work in the automotive industry. We hated putting aftermarket parts on because half the time they just didn't fit. They weren't as good a quality, but there were some parts that definitely were good quality. So when we're looking, we made a lot more money on aftermarket parts. So when it came to margins, I was all for selling aftermarket parts. Now you're saying it's on new appliances. There's nothing you can do. Um, there's people out there repairing old appliances for more than what it would cost to replace them because it's a hassle to replace things. So it's all in the way you perceive the value and reading your customer. So I'm going to shut up and let you continue.
Okay. Oh, Jane, give me just a second. My notes. Okay. So, we're going to talk about actionable steps when communicating value to support your pricing. Number one, create a one-page value proposition document for your business. Another SOP, right? We're always talking about creating SOPs, and this is a good one right here. So you want to write it down. Like you don't want to just put it out there because it will go away. Number two, role play price objection scenarios with your technicians weekly, 100%. And some of them still will not get it, but it's perfectly fine. But the more you role play, the better they're going to be. The more you role play, the more likely they're going to suggest an upsell. The more you role play, the more likely they're going to offer good, better, best. The more you role play, the more that they will buy into your system. So role playing is key. It was very key to us to get flat rate pricing in, and every time we made a change, um, our technicians knew how to walk and talk. They knew how to park. They knew how to, walk up to the door. They knew how to knock on the door. There was a specific way to knock on the door. So, role playing was key to get them there because all of that builds that level of service that you're charging for. Now revise your service call scripts to emphasize value early in customer interaction. So don't be just like it's $89 for us to come out. Like you're not building value. They're expecting a cheap Charlie a lot of times if you do something like that. Name, phone number, address, $89. I'll be out there. Right? That's a cheap Charlie approach. You get someone actually answering your phones. It's $89 for us to come out. What it's going to do? They're going to drive a truck that's stocked with hundreds of parts. We're going to do our best to do the install on the repair on the first trip. Like you're building value. Thank you for that, Mrs. Jones. I'll be happy to help you out with that. Let me get that taken care of for you. You're in the right hands. That is value building at the very beginning. Um, and that takes role playing also, but then putting your technicians in that same boat. Number 4, add visual elements to your quotes that highlights your how you're different. So, um, Andrew, that can go along with selling new clients. Um, adding pictures. Yes, it may look like the same, right? But here's why mine is better. Yes, it's a little bit more, but here's why mine is better. So we had what we called a adult coloring book. Jason called it an adult coloring book, where yes, we're installing a meter service, and our meter service may cost 500 or if $1,000 more if they're hiring a handyman, if not more. Um, but here's why we're better. Like a new appliance, selling a new appliance, yes, it's set by Lowe's, but prices are set by Lowe's all the time. Like it's about why are they buying from you? What sets you apart different? What makes the difference? Yes, I can go buy that new washer from Lowe's, but now I'm gonna have to call an 800 number and talk to someone in another country in order to get it serviced if it breaks down, right? I don't have to do that if I buy it from you. And it's no different, like, Jason and I were talking on Tuesday about how we don't use the cheapest plumber in town. I know that I can get a toilet installed for half the price with the guy over here, right? I don't do that. I don't go buy the toilet myself and install it myself because what if it breaks? What if I can't figure it out? It's gonna cost me more. I call the good plumber. I call the plumber that I know is going to come in and take care of it and do it right the first time for a reason, and I pay that price for it. So, new appliances are no different. Okay, so what did he ask here? He said, so this whole seminar, is there no answer to finding a stable pricing? Stable pricing is going to be different for everybody. So, yes, there is an answer to finding it, but everybody's is different. You're muted, Mike, because I think you said something. I
Yeah,
saw
I
your
don't think
mouth
there's
mute.
such a thing as stable pricing in any industry. I mean, if you're looking for an answer to stable pricing in this, you're not going to get it because there's no such thing. It doesn't exist.
Well,
We're not talking
I mean,
about.
stable for your own company, yes, but
Yeah, I
stable
mean, but that's not what we're talking about here. I think you're completely, based on your statement here, Andrew. I think you're completely misunderstanding what we're talking about. We're talking about pricing consistency in your business and building growth into your pricing. We're not talking about stabilizing pricing. That there's just no way to do that. You are going to constantly have to adapt and adjust and shift as market changes, as your own business scales, as things in your demographics grow, in your service area grows, um, and just changing shifts in the economy and the manufacturers
Yep.
and of things. So
Well, I think
everything's a moving
um,
target.
everything is a moving target. A big example is when COVID hit, right? We had our prices, but when COVID hit, the price of wire alone tripled in cost. It went from, and I think some of them even quadrupled in cost. So we could get a roll of wire for $50 before, and now it's 150 to eight to $200. Like, no, we did not account for that. But as soon as that happened, we had to make the shift to account for it. So really, truly, it's about finding the stable in your business, finding the stable for you, but also knowing that our stable is never actually truly stable. Like, we are constantly having to grow and shift and adjust, whether it's with prices, with new models coming out and new ways to service those models, technicians coming in and saying that they know how to do things and they don't actually know how to do things, and you have to shift and adjust. And like, this is our businesses, they are a constant revolving door of changes. So, good morning, Jojo.
Takes a lot of consistent evaluations of your business and your pricing.
Yeah.
You should be doing that on a consistent basis, no matter what. Um, just like shopping insurance every 6 months, you should do that. That helps um your expenses, right? So if you're paying too much for something, you should shop it. If How do you know if you're paying too much for something unless you shop it? You should be reevaluating everything all the time.
Yep.
Um, you should obviously find out where you're getting the best deals and the best vendors, but also look at the value of what those vendors are providing. Maybe they are
Yep.
a little bit more expensive than the other one, but they offer some outstanding, you know, value
Returns.
in
Like, maybe
returns,
the
things like
returns are
that.
easier, or
Yeah.
the customer support and the customer service is, uh,
So
it's worth
that's
the extra
value
money.
that you can look at, but obviously you now when you take that into account, you need to convey that to your customers like we were talking about with the value. So there's there's a lot of things that you have to take into account with your entirety of your business. There's not just one thing that you can set and say, "Oh, I just need to add 20% to my pricing and I'm gold." That
Yeah.
doesn't work that way. Um, so predictable growth, it requires consistent execution for your pricing strategy. So some of the key points I want to discuss. Pricing inconsistency can destroy your profitability and growth. That's why I'm not a fan of the time-based models. Um, Now, if you're not watching these margins closely, it can get way out of hand really quick. So you need to test different things. You need to build in that consistency and you need to watch your margins because if you set your pricing and everything else changes underneath really too much, then your pricing isn't consistent. Okay. So I'm not talking about a set it and forget it price. When I say consistent pricing, I mean your margins also can fluctuate up and down as the rest of the business does and as the rest of the world does. Okay. So that's what I mean about consistent margins. All right. Your tools, your software, all of those things go up. You need to make sure that all of that is accounted for. You're going to have replacement tools you need to account for. When and how to update your pricing, scheduled reviews, and reactive changes. You need or versus reactive changes. Now you don't need to react to every little market change, but you need to evaluate what market changes are happening so that you can go through them and adjust pricing as needed. Okay. Now, your training and accountability for your team on pricing adherence is going to be key to this. Every technician is going to feel bad for somebody, they're going to feel sorry for someone, they're going to always have an excuse on why they should get a better deal, and someone's going to give it to them. And your technicians and you need to be on the same page, period. Otherwise, this would never work. You set the pricing in your company, your
Yep.
technicians don't. This is your bus, you drive it, your technicians are along for the ride. You gave them a bus ticket, they're on your bus. You need to tell them, this is our pricing. You can make some judgment calls on occasion, but it's the exception, not the rule. Okay? You need to set that tone. Otherwise, you're going to fail way more than you're going to succeed. So that's the real blunt way of putting it. And there's much nicer ways to put it. I'm just a real blunt kind of person. But make sure that they're in line with what the vision of the company is. Okay?
Yeah. So we've got some actionable steps for pricing consistency. One is getting a scheduling field software CRM. Um, there are easy ones out there. There are difficult ones out there. There are some that are specifically made for the appliance industry. Do your research if you need help determining what each of them are and why, what's the goods and bads of each of them. I've had my hands in a lot of them. Reach out to me, set up go on our website and set up a discovery call with me and just put on there, I need to talk about CRMs. I'd be happy to go over that with you. So get a CRM, or if you're not happy with your CRM, like there are some out there that you can, for the most part, you're never going to be 100% happy, but let's find you the best software. Um, Create a pricing authority policy. So another SOP, here is what we're doing, team, and this is why we're doing it. It's in writing in front of them. Schedule quarterly pricing reviews. So that's what we were talking about earlier with Andrew. You can't just set a price and say, okay, this is how much I'm charging. Like you need to do quarterly reviews based off of your financial goals for the future. Develop a simple dashboard to track pricing compliance across your team. So um, we had something similar to that where we actually did a dry erase board and we tracked closing percentages and average tickets, and it went up on the board every single day. So it was well worth doing it. So definitely look into that, put it in front of them so they see it. Because if it's out of sight, out of mind, they think they're doing good. But if it's in front of them, they can see if they're doing good or not.
All right. So, real quick, let's get this wrapped up.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about scaling your pricing as you grow. We talked earlier about as your company grows, your business scales, your pricing structure needs to evolve as well. So, let's discuss the scale of your pricing strategy. All right. Use hard data whenever possible. Always go to data to refine your pricing over time. Like we discussed earlier, you need to constantly stay on top of this. But if you're doing it by feelings or personal judgments or memory, you're gonna more than likely fail. You're gonna miss the mark. Try to use hard data to refine your pricing over time. Look at your CRMs, look at your pricing on parts, all of that stuff. Look at all your expenses. I mean, and include everything, the whole gamut. Um, all the forgettables that we mentioned earlier. Make sure that you consider geographic pricing zones in your service area, depending on how big your service market is. Maybe some areas justify an increased margin, where others may not. If you've got to drive a very long way to get there, that could increase your margins. So those zones in certain geographic areas could justify pricing adjustments. So different pricing adjustments for different customer segments, residential versus commercial. Obviously, commercial are always going to justify a higher ticket. So if you're not doing commercial, personally, I think you should consider it because they are a little easier to work on, and they may not always be the easier situation or customer to deal with, but your margins could be a lot better. You could charge a lot more there. Building premium service tiers that increase average transaction value. That's key. We talked about this earlier by having different tiers, different value added services that you could put in that Shayna covered. Have those ready. So there's always ways that you can increase your average transaction value.
Awesome. So let's talk about some actionable steps when it comes to this. Number one, segment your customer base and analyze profitability by segments. Different ways to do that. Some we found it worth doing that in we did it by county. So our customers were segmented by county. So I knew which county had the higher tickets, which county had more calls in, which counties had the more difficult customers. So there's a couple different things, several different things that we actually analyzed for those. Um, Test premium service offerings with your best customers first. So if you want to do something new, you don't have to just throw it out there. If you've got the customer that's also a friend or a friend that's also a customer, because we had customers that became friends, we went to them and we said, hey, we're thinking about doing this. If we did this, maybe you might need it, but do you see value in it? Do you see why we would want to do this? And ask. But you don't have to just go full blown into something. Test the market. Create dedicated pricing structure for commercial accounts. So some of those commercial accounts can be tough, but if you create that structure and you put it in place, you're going to find the good commercial accounts and grab them and take them in. And then build a 12-month pricing evolution plan aligned with your growth goals. So that's going to be that projection that we were talking about earlier. So um, if you need help with any of this, we can create a worksheet off of this. We're happy to send out the actual steps. Reach out to myself or Mike, and we'll be happy to get those out to you. Business owners who master their pricing structure are the ones that grow predictably, and that is the key. We do not want to go into the feast and famine cycle. We want to grow predictably. Having slow times of the year is not uncommon, but being able to plan for those slow times a year is where it's at.
Yeah. So this week we challenge you to complete, you know, going through all your expenses and going through your current pricing structure, see what it's generating and what it's not, and figure out your growth opportunity that you can add into your pricing. Try to figure out what your market can bear and how you can use your pricing structure to fund your future growth. That's our challenge for this week. So this is not an easy undertaking by any
Mhm.
means. I mean, it's a lot of evaluation, but most people that don't do it, they'll never ever grow. If you really seriously want to grow, this is a step that's necessary. It's one of those necessary evils that we have to do. And you can definitely build growth into your pricing, and then you don't have to worry about the growth. You know it's going to happen. You know that you're going to be able to fund it. So that's our challenge this week. And we will see you all next week. Have a good one.
Bye, guys.
Thanks for tuning in to the Service Alliance Group podcast. Make sure you visit our website at servicealliancegroup.com for home service business resources.